Taking a look here at She-Hulk. She-Hulk is a solo melee fighter with 20 health. The ability is, at the start of your turn, you may discard a card to deal damage equal to its boost value to a fighter in your zone. Starting off with the attack cards, a 5-value attack with 2 copies, the Omega level threat. If you dealt 2 or more combat damage, your opponent discards 2 random cards. Sensational is a 4-value attack, 3 copies. After combat, if you won the combat, you may choose a card from your discard pile and shuffle it into your deck. The Savage She-Hulk, 2 copies, 3-value attack, but the during combat says you may spend an additional action to make this card's value a 9 instead. Versatiles, 4-value versatile, 3 copies, green energy. After combat, if you won the combat, deal 1 damage to each fighter adjacent to She-Hulk. Nerve Cluster Strike is a 3-value versatile, 3 copies. Immediately, if She-Hulk is adjacent to the opposing fighter may not leave their space this turn. Then we have a 2-value versatile with 3 copies, Legalese. After combat, if you won the combat, your opponent chooses whether you both draw a card or both discard a card. If you lost the combat, you make the choice instead, see above. Cease and Desist is a 1-value versatile, 3 copies. Immediately cancel all effects on your opponent's card. During combat, if you are attacking, the value of this card is 4 instead. The Defense Rests is a 2-value defense, 2 copies. After combat, draw cards equal to the amount of combat damage you took. We got a 0-value defense, 3 copies, called Lady Justice. During combat, discard the top card of your opponent's deck. Increase the value of this card by twice that card's boost value. The Schemes, Leap Towards, 2 copies, move She-Hulk up to 4 spaces. She may move through spaces containing opposing fighters. Then, if she is adjacent to an opposing fighter, gain 1 action. Jennifer Walters, ESQ, 2 copies. Place She-Hulk in a starting space. Draw 1 card, gain 1 action. Double Jeopardy, draw 2 cards and recover 2 health. She-Hulk here is pretty scary. She's got an intimidating 20 health, which is super high for this game. At the start of your turn, you can discard a card to deal damage equal to its boost value to a fighter in your zone. Keep that ability in mind as we go through this deck and what each of the boost values are. Her highest is going to be a 3, but she has recursion. So even if you use something like the Savage She-Hulk for the 3 auto damage, then you're still sitting pretty to be able to recursion this and use it, maybe. And one thing I would also say is that when you're playing as She-Hulk and you're thinking about what cards to use, it's important to pick cards that you don't use very much, such as Double Jeopardy. I'd say this is probably your best card to throw away for your ability because you don't really use the effect as much. Some cards you want to keep and use the effect of, like Lady Justice in most matchups, right? And then some of these are just 1 value, so they're not useful unless you just can't get past a sidekick or something like that, and you need to just get them out of the way and then run in and hit them with a big attack. So Savage She-Hulk says you may spend an additional action to make this card's value a 9. It's almost like a pass as well, because you're not drawing or anything or using a card for your second action, and that means you only do 1. If you're able to do this as your first action, they end next to you. If they do, they're probably going to be expecting this card and feint it so that they only take 1 damage. But you can fake them out with maybe this Omega level threat, and that will have 3 damage go over the top if they use a feint on it. It's another card you probably don't want feinted because the effect is just incredible. If you dealt 2 or more combat damage, which most likely you will because most defenses are a 3, your opponent discards 2 random cards. You can even do this into both of these in a row because there's 2 copies, or this maybe into this one because then they'll have less cards to work with. You gotta know your opponent, and if they're gonna play a defense card or hold off or play their better defense card at the beginning or second. And speaking of sensational here, if you did win the combat, you can choose a card from your discard pile and shuffle it into your deck. So you get that recursion. So if you played this first, then this, then you can come back with the Omega level threat. And it is exactly what it says it is, a threat. So those are your attack cards. We have green energy here. which is pretty interesting because it is your highest base value defense card. You also have the Lady Justice. Normally it'll be a 4 minimum, but it could also be a 0. It could also be a 1. And if they attack it with a cancel, it is, you're taking that 2 damage. So be wary of that. And some characters that have cancels also, like Invisible Man, to cancel on attack. So back to green energy here. If you won the combat, you're dealing a damage to each fighter adjacent to She-Hulk. Well, sometimes you might want to use this on attack, because if you do win that combat and position yourself properly, you can get rid of a bunch of sidekicks. Otherwise, I'd say just use it for defense. It's a pretty good defense, and that's probably what you want to use it for, and there's 3 copies. The Nerve Cluster Strike, if she's adjacent to the opposing fighter may not leave their space this turn. So if you do it on defense, you're going to for sure be able to lead into something like the 9 and at least have that threat there. You at least want the threat while you're playing the game. If you won the combat, your opponent chooses whether you both draw a card or both discard a card. If you lost the combat, you make the choice instead. So you just decide when to play this so that the effect goes in your favor, or whatever you want at the time. 2, not that strong to be able to determine that anyway. This doesn't seem like a strong card, but it is your cancel, and you do have a big health pool, so I wouldn't worry about playing this on defense. But if you are attacking, it changes to a 4 value. And this is another great one to just throw with your ability and deal 2 damage. And the difference between the ability and Medusa is Medusa's going to get her ability off if the other opponent is playing properly, maybe like 3 times in a game. She-Hulk could get it off once with Savage She-Hulk and do the same amount of damage that Medusa could do. So it's a little scarier. You are wasting a card, but you do have that recursion. The defense rests is your draw power. So just be careful how much damage you're taking so you're not overdrawing, because you can work for fatigue with this character. And then Lady Justice is one of the most incredible defenses in the game, as long as it's not canceled. I mean, you're discarding a card from the top of their deck, which will fatigue them faster. There's 3 copies. You can recursion it, and you get to increase the value. And like I said, it's most likely going to be a 4. Taking a look here now at the schemes, Leap Towards and Jennifer Walters are going to help you be able to get the Savage She-Hulk ability off and it become a 9. Because this gains an action and this gains an action. This one allows you to move 4 spaces through opposing fighters, so if they're not positioning well their sidekicks to block, you can end right next to their hero and hit them with something big if they are not careful. And you have 2 copies of that. Maybe you need to recursion that with Sensational so that you can get in a game. So keep that in mind for recursion as well. And then this one makes it so that your opponent has to be careful about not just zones, not just spaces and where they're positioning, but also starting spaces. If they position adjacent to a starting space, you get to draw a card and gain an action. Or appear there, draw a card, and gain an action, which also could lead into Savage She-Hulk. So even if you don't get this off in the game, it makes them position away from it or right on top of it so that you couldn't go there. So keep that in mind for the game as well. And it also could just help you get across the board closer to someone that's running away instead of like right adjacent. Draw 2 cards and recover 2 health. I recommend not using that in most games, most matchups. Now, there are times you can, because it's threatening when you have a 20 health character and you've done some damage and they recover 4 health, in a game. But you're drawing 4 cards if you've used this twice in the match. But like I said, use it for the boost value and just throw it at someone at the beginning of your turn. As She-Hulk here, you're going to be wanting to go in at the proper time. You don't want to go in just, all willy-nilly, and which you could go in willy-nilly and probably still do pretty well. But she's waiting for those opportune moments to go in and hit the opponent big or fake them out. Now, I can't overstate this enough, but this fake out here, the Omega level threat and the Savage She-Hulk, is just incredible and an incredible threat throughout the game. So if you could keep one of each of these in your deck or hand, that threat's always going to be alive. so they won't know what's going to come. This or this. Do I want to feint or do I not want to feint? And sometimes they do want to feint that. They'd rather take the damage than discard 2 random cards because that's pretty. That's a big ouch right there. But as She-Hulk, you're going to want to get in with the schemes and attack big, and be careful about which cards you're throwing and in which matchup you are throwing your cards away for your ability. And you don't have that big of defense in these 4 here, but you do have the green energy. You do have Lady Justice. Just be careful that that doesn't get fainted, as I said, and you take big damage on that. And be careful not to deck out, because you could play pretty silly and deck out. So be careful not to play double jeopardies if at all, right? Maybe you do want to play them in certain games, or if you're adjacent and you don't have anything, you just draw 2 cards to be able to do the attack. Okay, that's totally understandable, but for the most part, you wouldn't want to be doing that. Anyway, She-Hulk here is a very scary opponent to go against. They're scared to go in because if they go in, you have the Savage She-Hulk and your ability sitting and waiting. So you could throw one of these, take 3 damage. They would take 3 damage at the beginning of the turn, and then you attack with a 5, or you attack with this, or you attack with one of these, and it's pretty crazy. So you could do a lot of damage in one turn. So don't be trying to push every turn to get some big damage in. You're going to get a few big damages in throughout the game, and that's enough to seal out a game in most cases. So you do that a few times, and then, of course, near the end of the game, when they're at low health, they're scared to come in because you have these boost values in your ability that you could just throw and wipe out on your turn for free. You don't even have to use the card for an attack or a scheme or a defense. You could just, boom, hit them. And so that is a scary threat. Anyway, that is She-Hulk, and I hope that helps you understand her a little bit better.